massively expand the power of these agencies, and they write the regulations and they become law. And the president sometimes will say, well, the Congress is not acting quickly enough, so I will just write an executive order. And presidents have been doing this. Those are illegal. A president, a constitutional president, should use the executive order to repeal all those bad executive orders and all those laws that were not legally. Of course, we have a judicial system that does the same thing. They do a lot of writing of laws. But, you know, the Patriot Act is an onerous bill, but what about this whole notion that the president can assassinate American citizens? That's what he says is the law of the land, just by an announcement. And he did it 3 times. Matter of fact, more than that has been known. But it was announced. Before in the past, they at least kept it secret, pretending that they didn't have it. Now they put it out on the table in a Senate hearing. Yeah, that is the position of the executive branch today, that they can. And not only that, when the National Defense Authorization Act got passed at the beginning of this year, this was put on a platter by the Congress and said the president can use the military now to arrest civilian Americans and put in prison and denied an attorney, denied a trial, denied charges, kept in a secret prison indefinitely. That's law of the land. And they said, well, it hasn't been used too much. But it's that principle that sits there. What if we get into an economic calamity like some of us believe we might if we don't straighten out our budget and we have chaos? If they rounded up the Japanese in World War II, they're quite capable of rounding up American citizens. If this authoritarianism that prevails, and people tend to, I can understand the desire, because when there is chaos and it looks like anarchy, people say, please, please give us more power, more government. So to me, as a physician in particular, I think an ounce of prevention, is much better than a pound of cure. So we need to prevent this from happening. So we have our work cut out for ourselves, but fortunately today, we're in better shape philosophically than we have been in a long, long time. I've been talking and reading and studying and trying to understand economics and foreign policy and personal liberty, and I got interested even in the early 60s and had trouble finding information. Today it's easy to find information. You have the internet. Even if the government has already started to try to close down and control the internet, that is one thing that we have to keep our eyes and keep up the vigilance to make sure they don't take place. And you and the people deserve a lot of credit for stopping this bill, Stop Online Piracy Act. This was done by the people complaining to their congressman, and the congressman started taking their names off that bill, and both the House and the Senate removed it, which means that if we send a message to Washington, even those who don't have strong convictions, they'll get their convictions from us because they always want reelected, and send them a message on what they ought to be doing. It's frequently been said, we talk about liberals and conservatives and independents and all, but, there was an old saying, I think it was especially in the 60s, they said if you were 20 years old and not a liberal, you didn't have a heart. I imagine you've heard that. But then they said if you were 40, you weren't a conservative, you didn't have a brain. And that was the way people were supposed to change. But the freedom movement says, why can't we have a heart and why can't we have a brain at the same time? And this is why for all our problems, whether it's the monetary problem, whether it's the economic problems that we're spending, whether it's the attack on our civil liberties, whether it's these ridiculous wars that we're constantly fighting, the answer comes in the principle of individual liberty, which is what Jefferson starts off with, in the Declaration, an inalienable right to our life and our liberties, and they come not from our government, but from a creator or in a natural way. And But we messed that concept up as well 100 years ago because it became divided. Some people thought, well, economic liberty was separate from personal civil liberties and personal lifestyle. So you have one half defending half of liberty, the other half on the other side, and they fight and fume. And so often these two sides get together and they expand the size of government, for different reasons. One side wants to spend money on domestic, the other one's on foreign wars. They get together and spend them on both. That has to be reversed. Freedom should bring people together. It should never be divisive if you understand what freedom is all about. We generally understand this on religious values. We know that we're supposed to protect freedom of religion. Sometimes it's still getting abusive, and sometimes the attacks today it doesn't make me comfortable. But we generally say yes, practice your religion, whatever you want to be. If you don't want to be anything, you don't want to believe, the government's not supposed to be involved. But when it comes to personal liberties, lifestyles, and what we put into our bodies, all of a sudden we have a bunch of busybodies telling us exactly what we're supposed to do with our lives and how we should run our lives. I think the principle there is that we should never accept the idea that the government can protect us against ourselves. It's our business. And personal liberty. The one thing, though, is tough for some people is that you have to be tolerant of other people, how they use it, whether it's their religious or their personal lifestyle, as long as if they mess up, they can't come to you and say, well, bail me out because I messed up. They can't do that. But the tolerance part is difficult for some because some people do use their personal liberties and it's rather abhorrent. But if they don't hurt anybody else, and it's just because they want to live that way, it should be their business. Now you say, well, that doesn't work. We have to have government stepping in. We have to have them stepping in economically because there's always a need. We have to step in because personal habits can get out of control. Well, yes, there's one rule that you can. They step in when people commit fraud or abuse or theft or injure people or steal or hurt people. Yes, that's when the government steps in. But not